Solving problems.
Yeah, that'd be perfect. You too. You guys on the outside. We want it to look official.
Okay, y'all ready?
Yes.
Eyes open. 1, 2, 3. One, two, three.
Thank y'all so much.
Thank you.
Okay, get you. I need to. I never got it. My daughter just had
He had a pretty thing. He didn't say it was a good until he realized
Well, good afternoon, everybody. It's my pleasure once again to welcome each of you to our Thursday afternoon meeting of the Rotary Club of Tyler. And I would like to know, number one, is everybody happy?
Yes.
Okay, here's question number two. Did everybody have a good Thanksgiving? All right, that's good. Now, one thing I want to do, it's a little bit out of order, but I want to thank our pianist, Vicki Conway, because usually by the time we get to that part of the meeting, you already snuck out. So I got you this time. And it is good to be back. It's good to see everybody. Please turn your cell phones off. And I want to now ask Pamela Walters, immediate past President Pamela Walters, to come forward and lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance and the National Anthem. Nice trousers you've got there. If I had better legs, I'd get a pair for myself.
Thank you. Let's start with the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Oh, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly began as the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare above bursting in air gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave? Y'all sound really good. I'm not kidding. Do I do the guest and everything?
Let me look at the itinerary.
I forgot. I think, yeah, somebody's got to say the invocation. It's Robert. Come on, Robert.
Yes.
Yeah, she wears those pants and then she thinks she can hug the whole show. Almighty God, give us grace to cast away the works of darkness and put on the armor of light, now in the time of this mortal life, in which your Son Jesus Christ came to visit us in great humility, that in the last day, when he shall come again in his glorious majesty to judge both the living and the dead, we may rise to the life immortal through him who lives and reigns with you and the Holy Spirit, one God, now and forever. Amen. Father, thank you for this time to come together and to seek ways that we can bless this community and to embody you. I pray that as we go through this season, we would be mindful of those for whom it causes pain or loneliness, and that we can minister the love of Jesus Christ to them in this time. Amen. Okay. All right, well, first of all, are there any visiting Rotarians or guests? And we'll start at this table up here in the front.
Brian Hoyle.
All right, Brian, and who did you come with?
I'm here to speak.
Oh, okay.
I'm also on the 12th Court of Appeals.
Well, I suppose we'll hear all about that.
Greg Neeley, and I'll be talking more later.
Great. Awesome, welcome. Back table here? No. Center table. Anybody?
Yes? Say that, you're a guest.
Pending member.
Yeah, pending member, Tracy, I'm sorry, what's your last name?
Sorry, Tracy Bailey.
Bailey, Tracy Bailey. He works with Train, and he also has a tree service, and he teaches the Bible. So, and a pending member, so there we go.
Awesome. Good to have you with us today. Back table there.
All rise.
Oh, man.
My guest is the Honorable Bill Bass, Judge Bill Bass. He is a retired judge from the 12th Circuit.
That's true.
He has quite a career. He was 16 years practicing law. He finally got it right. He was appointed elected to House of Representatives here in Texas. And then he was appointed appellate judge by was Mark White, Governor Mark White. He has done a lot to keep me out of jail.
Do you have the pleasure?
Better known
No, I
as
don't.
the man
I only have this,
Martin Mill.
so I just gotta
That's where he grew up. And that's where
flash it, so.
Well, great to have you with us. Thank you for all of your service to our community. Anybody else at the back table there? Back corner? Nope. And then, nope, forward. Okay. Back to Bill.
Thank you, Robert. Okay, now it's that time for Rotary birthdays and anniversaries. So let's go ahead and do the Rotary birthdays first. December 1st, Lisa Chatton. December 6th, Gates Brelford and Jennifer Dobbins. December 12th, Michael Kennedy. December 15th, Dennis Cullinane and Dylan Myrick. The 16th is Kimberly Smotherman and Trudy Williams. The 18th is Richard Perryman. 21st is Robert Wells. 26th is Dr. Mike Medke. And the 31st is Chris Hill. And let's all sing happy birthday. Whoa. What? Robert's birthday is the 4th. Okay, we don't want to leave him out. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Rotarian. Happy birthday to you. And many more. All right, next. Next is Rotary anniversaries. December 1st, Mike McNally, 41 years.
Whoa.
That's right. December 4th, Dr. Mike Metke, 7 years. On the 7th, Michael Kennedy, 4 years. And December 21st, Robert Finney for 1 year. Everybody, big hand for these Rotarians. Our greeters for today were Mike Kavanaugh, Austin Luce, another big hand for them. And it's time once again for This Week in History. Please welcome Paul Glasser.
Thank you, sir. Where did it go? Oh, here we go. On the 2nd of December, 2001, Enron of Houston, headed by Kenneth Lay, filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection. It was, for a minute, the largest bankruptcy ever until WorldCom followed it shortly thereafter. Once number 7 on the Fortune 500 list, Enron's collapse wiped out more than $2.1 billion in employee pensions, resulted in the dissolution of the giant accounting firm Arthur Andersen and saw Chairman Kenneth Lay and CEO Jeffrey Skilling convicted on multiple federal counts. Lay died of heart disease while his case was on appeal. Skilling served 12 years and was released in 2019. On the 3rd of December, 1967, Dr. Christian Barnard, a South African surgeon, completed the first ever heart transplant on a human, on 53-year-old Louis Washkansky, a Cape Town, South African grocer, who was dying from advanced heart disease. Washkansky lived for 18 days, succumbing to pneumonia, which resulted from the immunosuppressing drugs he had to take in order to avoid the heart being rejected. The heart, however, functioned normally right until the moment of his death. On the 4th of December, 1783, fully intending to retire from public life, General George Washington bade farewell to his officers at Francis Tavern in New York City. As he resigned his commission, he said, we quote, "With a heart full of love and gratitude, I now take leave of you. I most devoutly wish that your latter days may be as prosperous and happy as your former ones have been glorious and honorable." His retirement didn't last. He was sworn in as the first U.S. president on April 30th, 1789. Spent very little time at his beloved Mount Vernon. Built it and was almost never there. On the 5th of December, 1933, at 4:32 p.m. Texas time, Utah became the 36th state to ratify the 21st Amendment to the Constitution, creating the 3/4 of the states necessary to repeal the 18th Amendment, which was adopted in 1920. Anybody remember what that amendment was? Yes, see, even in Tyler, they know about prohibition. The 18th Amendment made the manufacture, transportation, and sale of intoxicating liquids illegal for beverage purposes in all 48 states. After the repeal, a lot of people don't know this, some states maintained prohibition. Mississippi didn't repeal its prohibition laws until 1966.
Whoa.
On the 6th of December, 1884, workers placed a 9-inch aluminum pyramid atop a 555-foot obelisk-like tower of white marble, and thus completed the Washington Monument. Started in 1848, it took 36 years to complete amid shortages of money and the intervention of the Civil War. At completion, it was, for a while, the tallest structure in the world. Remains the tallest in Washington, D.C. by virtue of the Height of Buildings Act of 1910, which makes it illegal to build any building taller than the Washington Monument. On the 7th of December, 1941, aircraft of the Japanese Imperial Navy staged a surprise aerial raid on Pearl Harbor, Hawaii within 24 hours. Congress had issued a unanimous declaration of war, save for one vote. Jeanette Rankin of Montana, the first woman elected to the Congress. Montana, by the way, as I said a couple of weeks ago, has not sent a woman back to the U.S. Congress since. And finally, on the 8th of December, 1980, 25-year-old Mark David Chapman, who had earlier in that very day obtained an autograph from his victim, fired 4 shots from a .38 caliber revolver into John Lennon, the former Beatle. Lennon died on the way to the hospital, sentenced to life in prison. Chapman remains incarcerated in Erie County, New York, and has been denied parole 11 times. Birthdays in the coming week. Tomorrow, Ozzy Osbourne inexplicably turns 73. On Saturday, actress Marissa Tomei turns 57. Also on Saturday, Jeff Bridges turns 72. On Monday, former governor of New York, now disgraced, Andrew Cuomo turns 64. Bet that's going to be a fun birthday. And on Wednesday, actress Kim Basinger turns 68, and that's this week in history.
All right, Paul, thank you. That's a very enjoyable segment of our meeting. Now it's time to move along for Rotary business. December 9th, next week, we've got our Christmas party at the Crooms. Cost is $40 per person. We're going to have appetizers, wine, beer, tea, and water. Register and prepay today. All right. Yeah, thank you, Bill and Donald, for having us over. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Yes, we are live entertainment.
Live entertainment? Who's coming?
Live entertainment.
Okay, who's coming? Well, that's real good. Okay, all right. Three-piece check, okay. All right, Tyler Rotary Foundation, project to be funded by December 15th. We need your help. Donations of any size are welcome and appreciated. The Guatemala Hospital project needs just a smidge over $3,000. Camp V Kitchen project needs $4,500. And our program for next week will be John Payne, our own John Payne, talking to us about estate planning. And now, to introduce our speaker, I want to introduce our president-elect, who, by the way, what's that, Jim?
Good
Oh,
news
we're gonna do
basket.
the good news basket?
Is
Well, it
that on
wasn't
there?
on the deal here, but yeah, we can. Well, let's go.
Because we were gonna do that to the projects account.
We always got time for the good news basket. Come on. Who's got some good news? Somebody's got to have some good news.
I had a full house again. My kids were home from college. It was the best. I cooked like crazy, but it was well worth every second.
Oh,
Woo!
great.
The good news I have, the Baylor Bears are playing in the Big 12.
I somehow knew that was going to be your good news, Dean. I knew that.
So Mike and I are our first grandson, Clyde, this grade.
Hey, good for you. Along that note, JB, along that note, 2 weeks from today, our third grandchild should be showing up. A little girl. Well, that's not up to me. That's the parents' deal, okay?
Ricky and I have celebrated last Friday our 45th wedding. I know I was 12.
Aging doesn't have many perks, but I found one this last week and loved it. I graduated to an advisory role on Thanksgiving Day. So I am very grateful.
I've got $41 here to celebrate my 41st year in Tyler Rotary Club.
Congratulations.
Well, Adam was gracious to give me $1 for the good news basket, but I did not have cash on me. But the Christmas parade is tonight, so if you aren't helping, at least come by and watch. It should be great. It's been a lot to take care of, but Mary and Dixie and everybody got it taken care of. So, and Holly, yes.
Yes. Okay, anybody else got any good news? That's all the good news, okay. All right, thank you, Jim. I want to introduce our president-elect, Allison Camry, who, by the way, is going to close out the meeting, because I have to go to Henderson for business. But Allison, here you go.
Thank you, President Bill. Our speaker this afternoon is Judge Greg Neeley, who's been on the 12th District Court of Appeals in Tyler since January of 2015. He graduated from high school in Victoria, Texas. He got a BA degree from the University of Texas at Austin in '79, and he received his law degree from Texas Tech in '82. After law school, he went to work for the Gregg County District Attorney's Office, where he was a misdemeanor and felony prosecutor. In 1984, he left the DA's office to enter private practice in Longview, where for 30 years he handled commercial real estate, insurance, defense, family, criminal, and probate litigation throughout East Texas. He has been, this is very interesting, and I didn't realize it until I read this. He has been board certified in civil trial law and board certified in personal injury trial law since 1995, which is a designation that less than 3% of Texas attorneys hold. That's stellar. He served on the State Bar Grievance Committee from 1997 to 2003, and he was the District 2A Chairman from the years 2002 to 2003. He's been a member of numerous legal associations over the years. He's married to Elizabeth, a freelance certified court reporter, and both are parishioners at St. Mary's Catholic Church in Longview. With his time, when he can do it, he enjoys golf and is currently learning to play pickleball. Judge Neeley, or Justice Neeley, we're happy to have you speak.
Hello, good afternoon. It's a pleasure to be here. My presentation this afternoon is going to be about the Texas Judiciary and about the 12th Court of Appeals. And I'm going to break down my talk into three parts. First, I'm going to give you a general overview of our Texas court structure. Then I'm going to talk some about the 12th Court of Appeals in particular. And I'm going to talk about who's on it, what the territory we cover, what we do, what an appeal is, and what it's not, and more or less how we're doing as far as our sister courts across the state. And then I'm going to conclude the talk with some issues that are floating around currently that could have impacts on the appellate court system in Texas. So with that, let's start off with this court structure in Texas. And it's basically three layers or three levels. First, you have your trial courts. There's about 1,000 of them in Texas. They're the constitutional county courts, they're the district courts, and they're the county courts at law, with the latter two really carrying much of the load. There is a judge per court, and below them, or above them, depending on how you want your chart to look, you have the intermediate appellate courts, which there's 14 in the state. The court in Tyler here is one of them. And then lastly, you have the high courts, and there's two of those in Texas. There's the Texas Supreme Court that handles civil appeals and juvenile appeals to the highest level. And then you have the Texas Court of Criminal Appeals that is the high court for criminal cases. And for trivia purposes only, Texas and Oklahoma are the only two states that have two high courts. All the other states have one court that handles all the high appeals. So, we've talked about the trial courts, and here's a list of the trial courts in Smith County. And there's 4 district courts and 3 county courts at law. I've shown the numbers and the judges on those courts. And of interest is in January of 2023, Tyler will have a 5th district court, the 475th, and the governor will appoint who that judge will be. So, what are the role of trial courts? That's ground zero in our Texas legal system. That's where all the heavy lifting goes. Thousands of cases are filed in Smith County as well as all over the state on an annual basis, and all of them funnel through these trial courts. And their job at the end of the day is to enter a final judgment that disposes of that case. And most of the time, these cases are settled, the vast majority, but the ones that aren't have to go through a trial, either a jury or non-jury trial, which many of you have probably been on juries and you know that process of going through. In others, there's other pretrial disposition ways. But the bottom line is in trial courts, you have disputed facts. People can't disagree. And the trial courts are solely responsible for resolving those conflicts of facts so they can apply the law to those facts and enter their judgment. And so you kind of see what that is. And the thing about it is the facts determined by the trial courts generally hold. Once they go up the appellate ladder, many of the appellate courts, with few exceptions, we can't change the facts. All we can do is examine how the law was applied to those facts. So then, once you get a judgment in the trial court, you can go up to the next level, the intermediate courts. And the intermediate courts were created by a Constitution amendment in 1891. Before then, if you had a judgment in a trial court, it went directly to the Supreme Court if it was civil, it went directly to the Court of Criminal Appeals if it was criminal. And you can imagine the backlog in cases if all the trial courts went to just 2 3-judge courts. And so these amendments created these mid-level appellate courts where direct appeals of civil cases went, but the criminal appeals still went to the Court of Criminal Appeals. And so these intermediate courts had to take all the appeals. If somebody wanted to appeal, we couldn't refuse it. These courts were made up of 3 members, and then the Supreme Court basically was there to cherry pick cases that were appealed to them to see what needed to be addressed at the highest levels that had significance to the legal jurisprudence of the state. So once those amendments were adopted, the legislature went to work and in 2 years created 5 courts. Over the next 3 years, they created 6 more. In 63, 2 more created, Tyler being one of them, and the last appellate court being created in 67 in Houston. So, was that system working? Yes, it was, with one exception. Too many cases, too few courts, too few judges. And so what was happening in particular, remember we talked about direct appeals, but from trial courts to the Court of Criminal Appeals on criminal cases? Even though those judges, there were 9 of them on that court now, every judgment in a criminal case goes to one court. It's between 1970 and 1980, it tripled. And the same thing was happening on the appellate courts across the state, especially in the urban areas. And so the dilemma was, how do we fix the backlog of cases with the Court of Criminal Appeals? And how do we help the urban area courts of appeals with their backlogs? And the solution was, do we add more judges or do we add more courts? And so the fix was, we're going to add more judges, and we're going to make those intermediate judges, courts with more judges, handle the criminal appeals just like this we did for the civil cases. So at that point, after 1980, all criminal and civil appeals went to the intermediate courts, with both the Supreme Court and Court of Criminal Appeals handling these discretionary, cherry-picked, high important cases. So immediately the legislature said, let's add some more judges. And you see most of them went to the urban areas. Tyler was a 3-judge court and made the 3-court judge. Who's on the 12th court? Chief Justice Jim Worthen has been on the court since 1999. He's been here, that's right. And he became chief in 2003. My colleague, Brian Hoyle, came on the court in 2006. I came on the court in 2015. All appellate judges, whether they're the intermediate courts or the 2 high courts, run for 6-year terms. So what is the area that we cover? 17 counties, a population, at least in 2010, just under 1 million. I suspect it's over 1 million now, but that's the 17 counties we cover. Here's a different view of it. You can see the area is pretty big. And then one more, you can kind of see on a statewide basis, the 12th court being right in here, the central part of East Texas. So what do? We handle the appeal of civil and non-death penalty criminal cases from the trial courts of records within 17 counties in our district. Anybody that disagrees with the judgment entered by the trial courts has the right to appeal it to us. And there's 44 district and county court at laws within the 12th district from which these appeals can come from. So how's a case appealed? First of all, the litigant has to timely file a notice of appeal. That's the easy part. Then that litigant has to go and from the court reporter have every bit of testimony transcribed, every hearing transcribed, any word that was said that's relevant to the case has to be transcribed by our court reporter and filed in our court. Also, all the papers that are filed, the pleadings, the exhibits that are filed in that case have to be filed with our court. Then the appellate has to file a brief. And the brief doesn't say, the trial court hosed me, we want another bite of the apple, find a way to let it happen. It's not that simple. What they have to do is in their brief, they have to specifically identify errors the trial court made in evidentiary rulings or procedural rulings that impacted the verdict in the case. Then they have to show us exactly where that error occurred in the record. We don't search for it, they have to show it to us. Then they have to show us how they properly preserved that error by a timely timely objection, because the bottom line is you can't blame the trial court and you can't cry foul if you don't tell the judge what he may be doing wrong and give him a chance to correct it. So you have to preserve that error. And lastly, what they have to do is they have to support their arguments with case law or statutory authority that shows they're right. So then the next other side gets a chance, and what do you think they do? He's wrong, the judge was right, they're just mad, let it stay the way it is. Now, it takes a few pages for them to say that, but that's basically what they say. So then, after all that's done, it's our time to work. And what do? We read, we review, and we research, the 3 R's. And that can be a taxing responsibility because we have to look at the issues raised, we have to look at the record, we have to look at the authority, and then through that process, we make decisions. And it's a collaborative three-way process between all the judges. Then we write an opinion. And in that opinion, we address all those issues. We set out our analysis, why we ruled the way we did, and we have to show the authority we relied on in making those decisions. And so these opinions can average 6, 7, 8 pages. Some will be in the 20 and 30 pages. It depends how complex the case is. So you can imagine that after we've reviewed thousands of pages of documents, read potentially thousands of pages of testimony, it all comes down to a 15 or 20 page written opinion. And that opinion is important because it tells the lawyers why we did what we did. It tells the litigants why we did what we did. It tells the trial judge why we did what we did. And it also tells all the other 43 judges in our district, this is what the law is on this issue. So if it comes up again and you have an appeal come to my court, that's the right answer. So there's a process to it and there's a benefit to it. As Judge Hoyle has said several times in talks he's made, you're not entitled to a perfect trial, you're entitled to a fair trial. And we try to ensure that those litigants got a fair trial. So what are the possible outcomes? More often than not, it's affirmed. Trial judge, you got it right, judgment stays just like it was. Sometimes it's reversed. And that reverse can either be reverse and render, which means we flip it. That only generally happens if the issue involved is a pure legal issue where the interpretation of the law of a statute really turns the whole case. In those particular cases, sometimes we will reverse and the other side will win just because of the legal call. But most often than not, we reverse and remand, and what that means is, judge, you did it wrong, do it again. They don't like those, trust me. So at that point, it's important to know we don't retry the case. We don't revisit the evidence. We don't rejudge the credibility of the witnesses, the testimony. Our job is not to change the facts. Those facts were established in the trial court. We're here to look at how the analysis and the application of the law fit with the facts that were determined. The opinion is based solely on the record before us. So if somebody doesn't like what we do, what do? They can appeal it if it's a civil case to the Texas Supreme Court, or if it's criminal, to the Court of Criminal Appeals. And what they do is they file a petition. The Court of Appeals was wrong because of this. They have to identify specifically the issue. The Supreme Court looks at it and they'll say, sometimes or most of the time, they say denied, no opinion, no explanation, just denied. Case is over or opinion stands. Sometimes they grant them, and if they do, then they rehear the case and they write their own opinion, which becomes the law of the land in Texas. When the Supreme Court issues an opinion over an issue, all the appellate courts, all the trial courts are bound by what they say. In a criminal case, it's the same way. But to give you an example of the Supreme Court, on average, I'd say 900 to 1,100 petitions get filed a year. Of those, they may grant maybe 100, sometimes less. Of those, they may hold about 60 or 65 oral arguments on those cases, and will turn out about 80 opinions a year. Compared to the other courts and compared to our court, that's not a whole lot of heavy lifting, but their cases generally are the most complex and the most important for the jurisprudence of the state. So what they say does matter. What are our goals? We want to faithfully and honestly serve the citizens of the 12th District by applying the law as written. I can speak for myself and Judge Hoyle and Chief Justice Worthen. We are not judicial activists. We use judicial restraint. If somebody has told us what the law is, we're going to follow the law. We're not going to make the law. We also want to resolve the legal dispute correctly. We want to get it right. Sometimes that takes longer than other times, but we want to make sure when an opinion comes out of our court, the answer is right. We also want to do it as quickly as possible without jeopardizing accuracy. Again, because justice denied is justice delayed. So we want these litigants to spend all this time to get to us after years of trial court work, a period of time in our court. We want to get it out as quick as we can. And lastly, we want to share this information to groups like y'all because we want y'all to know what we do and how we do it. So, how do we do it? Well, there's some measures that the Supreme Court puts on us. They're called performance measures, and one of them is clearance rates. And clearance rate basically means appellate courts, we want you to dispose of as many cases that are filed in your court in a given fiscal year. We want your clearance rate to be 100%. And guess what? In 2018, 2019, we're the only Court of Appeals that nailed it. So we're pretty proud of that. Now you might say, well, what about 2020, 2021? COVID. The rules don't apply after COVID. So we're slowly getting back on track, and we're sure we'll continue that performance, but it's going to take some time. All right, so how fast are you, 12th Court? Well, this is the average time from filing to disposing of a case, and second only to Texarkana, we're number 2. And we're number 2 quite a bit over some of the other courts. You can see the El Paso court, they're not doing so well. And there's reasons for that, but that's for another talk. So we're getting it right, we're clearance right, we're speed right, and even more, over the past several years, less than 1%, and that's way less than 1% of our cases that are petitioned to the Supreme Court or the Court of Criminal Appeals are reversed, which means we're 99 plus something success. And in many cases, we have 0 cases that are reversed. And we're very, very proud of that. It means we're getting it right. I don't really have a chart to show how we rank with the other courts, but I'm pretty sure we're pretty close to the top. Now, in conclusion, let's talk about some clouds on the horizon, some changes that may be coming that could impact not only the appellate courts, but also people within the various districts. All judges in Texas are elected in partisan elections, have been since 1850. It's a big debate over accountability versus independence. We all know from the federal system, those judges, when they're appointed for life. And they are completely independent at that point. Texas doesn't want their judges to be independent. They want their judges to be accountable to the voting public. Nothing wrong with that. But some things are happening in recent years that is kind of making this debate a little bit more critical. And that one thing is the changing political landscape and the divergence between rural and urban interest. And to give you an example, this is what's happening. Here's the judges that were on the courts in 1980. 2016, all 9 Supreme Court justices were Republicans. All 9 Court of Criminal Appeals justices were Republicans. In the Court of Appeals, 66 were Republicans, 14 were Democrats. And I'm not making any opinions or voicing anything, I'm just giving you the numbers. 2018, the first year of what's called the sweeps. In the urban areas, Dallas, Houston, San Antonio, and Austin, 23 seats held by Republican justices were on the ballot, all lost. Now the ratio is 43 Republicans, 37 Democrats. 2020, 5 more seats were lost. Many of these Republican justices that were voted out of office were experienced, very talented, very smart people. That's what happens in partisan elections. Not making an opinion, telling you what happens. Now, 2022 is coming. There's 8 justices that hold Republican seats in the urban areas coming up. If the current trends hold, all are going to lose. So at the end of 2022, 6 years after 2016, we could have 30 Republicans and 50 Democrats holding the intermediate appellate seats. The rural districts, and I forgot to put Beaumont on there, Tyler, Texarkana, Waco, Eastland, Amarillo, and Beaumont all have Republican justices. Fort Worth is the only district that's an urban area that has Republican justices. And that's really, Tarrant County is the only urban area in that district. The rest of it's rural. So there, you're kind of seeing what's happening. In the urban areas, there's down to 1 or 2 Republicans left. In the rural areas, it's all Republicans. So what does that mean? Well, there are pro-business groups, there's tort reform groups, there's some other conservative groups that their eyebrows are being raised. And they're saying, we don't like this trend. So what are we going to do? 3 things have been happening these last 2 sessions in the legislature. 1, they're trying to create specialty courts. These are very restricted, very specific courts to handle very certain cases. But what's common about both is all the judges would be appointed by the governor. There's also a move to redistrict the appellate courts. In other words, from the 14 to a different number, are to change the boundary lines. And lastly, there's some movement to eliminate partisan elections as a whole. So there's the map I showed you before of the whole state. Last session, Senator Huffman filed a bill called SB 11. And in that bill, she sought to change the district lines. And there was a lot of initial talk about Tyler being sucked into the Dallas court. And I can assure you, if that would have happened within 2 or 3 election cycles, you probably would have had a Dallas person on this court or on that court that y'all would never see and would never come to talk to y'all. Maybe not, maybe so, but there was definitely going to be more strength in the metro areas than in the rural areas. So this was Senator Huffman's final map that she came up with. And you can see at the end, Tyler was merged with Beaumont. But look at what happened to Texarkana, Waco, and Eastland. These are all 3-judge courts. They're morphed and merged into this Fort Worth district. Can you imagine the strain on somebody running from Texarkana or Eastland or Waco in this district? It would be enormous. Well, that bill was voted out of her committee in April of 2021, but a week later she pulled the bill. And there's a lot of speculation why. A lot of it was probably she didn't think it would pass the House, so why waste the energy on something that's not going to make it? But regardless of what she did, SB 11 is not going away. Or to come kind of another trivial slide, whenever the lieutenant governor, he reserves about the first 5, 10, 15, 20, 30 bills. So if a Senate bill has a low number, that's number 1 priority for the lieutenant governor. So the fact that this bill got 11 means it's on the radar screens. So what else is going on? In 2019, the legislature allowed for the creation of a commission to study how judges are selected in Texas. And throughout 2020, they went across the state, had numerous hearings, heard a lot of testimony, and they issued the report in 2021. And the issue was, do we retain our current system, or do we recommend to the legislature that we go to a governor appoint retention vote system? And that was split pretty much on equal lines. What's interesting is that split was almost down urban versus rural lines. The urban members were for the governor appointment retention system. The rural members were pretty much for keep it the way we have it, because we like to vote for our judges. It's going to take a constitutional amendment to change that, but from this past election, last, I guess November, it was the only thing on the ballot, except in this case, the bond election. Turnout was horrible. So we all know that when you have these constitutional elections on off election years with low turnout, most of the time they're passed. So you really have to watch this. And you may be hearing 1 or all 3 of these things popping up. And if you do, what you're going to say is, Judge Neeley told me about that. I'm going to pay better attention. I'm going to tell my friends. Well, with that, I'm through. Any questions? Yes, sir.
It's a practical matter of 3-judge court in this municipality.
What happens when one or more of you are personally acquainted with the parties?
We recuse ourselves.
Judge Bass does it for us.
Yeah, Judge Bass he's our go-to guy when there's a conflict for any reasons. Now, I'll tell you, that association has to be pretty current. You know, I practiced law for 30 years, and there's gonna be occasionally an insurance defense company or something that I may have worked for 15 years ago. That's not close enough. But if I had a client that I was doing work for, I had a personal friend, if I recognize that name, I'd say, guys, handle it yourself or get Judge Bass.
Out of 1,000 cases that come before appellate courts in the state of Texas, how many are affirmed and how many are?
I would say the affirmance rate is close to 95%. I know it is in our court. I suspect it's not far across the state. We got good trial judges here. They do it right. Rarely do we have.
Of course, yeah, after the census this past year, Tyler, Smith County is going to be the district court. Are y'all required by law as well to have the redistricting of the appellate court jurisdiction or the appellate court announced?
Judge Hoyle, help me on this. Isn't that visited generally 2 years after the legislature redraws the congressional and district lines? That's visited then. So I think next session, they will look at that. The last time these lines were effective was 2005. And I think in that year, we gave up Kaufman County, but gained something else. I forget.
Yeah, we gained Angelina County.
Yeah.
They look at them, but they just tweak them. And the last time they looked at them was 2014, and they didn't do anything, so.
So it can happen, and maybe every 20 years there's some tweaks. Anything else? All right, guys, thank you so much. This is how you can reach us. Appreciate the time.
One question I had, are you Judge Neeley or Justice Neeley?
Technically justice, but I'll go by anything.
What's the difference between justice and judge?
Judge is in the district court, and justice is on an appellate court.
More or less.
Okay, all right, thank you. I did not know that distinction. Okay, Ace of Diamonds time. JB3, one half of the drawings for the club, one half of the amount benefits the Tyler Rotary Club. The other half belongs to the Rotarian winner unless it's a guest, then the guest will get 25%, their sponsor will get 25%. And Justice Neeley, we want you to draw the winning ticket for us and read out the last three numbers.
Okay. $1,012.42.
That's a useful amount of money, 1,000 something.
I take care of a few parking. Okay.
I didn't bring my reading glasses.
Yeah.
I'm gonna let Judge Foyle read those numbers.
385.
Whoa. 385, oh, okay. John. Oh, man.
I forgot what he did.
Also to let you know, the Good News Basket raised $129 today. That's a significant. Holly, where's the Good News Basket money go to?
That is going to go to our two projects. It's going to go between the Guatemala project and the Camp D project. So it's going to try, that's what this week and next week is going to do for Good News Basket. And then the week before Christmas, we do a, she's not in here. Good. We do an annual gift to Lupita for taking such good care of us. So, you know, whatever you can do would be grateful for her because she works her tail off for us, I'll tell you.
Bring the cash.
Yeah, bring the cash. Exactly. Okay.
I've got to find this certificate over here. Justice Neeley, we also, for each speaker, we present a book to the Literary Council in honor and appreciation of your speech with us today, and why don't you have a certificate?
Thank you very much.
Okay, let us stand for the four-way test of the things we think, say, or do. Number one.
Is it true?
Number two.
Is it fair to all concerned?
Number three.
Will it build goodwill and better friendships?
Number four.
Will it be beneficial to all concerned?
We are adjourned.
Yeah.
Do you have a card? Okay, do you cut trees down? Dropping trees. Thank you. Be tricky. Can't get in. Okay. I can't have any equipment coming up in my backyard. Because I've got this remote. A sewer line, whatever. Huh? Yes, It's 903 520 9639. Cassie. There we go. No, I've got a lot of firewood, trust me. In fact, I've got some big chunks of wood I wish somebody would take. I mean, like chunks like this that are about this thick. They're just laying out there. I had people around my neighborhood come and take what they wanted. And I took what I wanted.
I understand that.
No, nobody wants the big ones.
You coming next week, Tracy? You coming next week? Okay, great. I'll just make sure I have you there. No, it was charging. It was just, I thought it charges it, but then it stopped flashing that it's charging. You just see the battery going up. Because I knew I charged this whole big thing last night because I got to take it to my mom.
Oh, okay. I'm ready for you, John.
Well, that's what I say. You gonna be here next week?
Yes, sir.
Yes, ma'am.
Well, give me a little training. Well, what I'm gonna do, I think I'll probably try to stand at the podium. If I have difficulty doing that, I always set my chair. But you'll be those PowerPoint slides you'll be putting on the screen. Mm-hmm. And do you hit the button to move them, or do I hit the? I noticed he was hitting the button to move.
Yeah, I've got. Okay.
Let me see how that works if I want to try to do it.
Okay. And basically, you just click on that.
And if I want to go back, I just click back.
You click back there, and then that right there is a pointer. It points at arrow light, and it's not on.
Yeah, I don't have to do that, but I want to go on. So, well, I'm trying to do that.
And I mean, if not, if you don't feel comfortable with it, just kind of.
I'm probably do it.
Kind of like David did with me.
Well, and instead of I'm just trying to think, do I bring papers with me? I'm not bringing papers, in case the projector goes out or something. But if you can see the screen, well, I might just look at the screen and talk like you was doing, kind of talk.
Okay, that's fine.
In fact, I might just sit here in my chair and talk from the screen.
Yeah.
Talk from the screen.
That will be fine. Just whichever which way you would like, John.
Okay, very good. That kind of gets
John,
me oriented.
You're still practicing,
yes,
right?
Yes.
Okay. I gave my boyfriend right now is in Arizona. He's in Green Valley, Arizona with his mother. Her husband just passed away November 2nd.
Yeah, your boyfriend's in Arizona, but who passed away?
His father, his stepfather.
Okay, but a relative of his, okay.
Yeah. So he's with his mother right now. They just got the death certificates yesterday. He's been there for 3 weeks.
And where, the person who died, where are they? In Arizona?
Yes.
In Arizona. So relative in Arizona died. Okay.
Yes. And so anyway, they're gonna come back. I'm not sure what the date yet is. Hopefully it'll be sometime next week. Like I said, they had to go into Tucson, picked up the death certificates from the funeral home. So now they're getting everything out. But there's still she still has questions. And so I'm like, well, I said, the only person I know is John Payne.
Is she gonna be here next week?
Yes, she is.
Well, bring her to Rotary, and after Rotary, we'll go in there and sit down and try to answer her questions. What do you think?
Okay, if they make it by next week.
If not, we'll do another time.
Okay, that would be fine.
And I won't, of course, they're in Arizona. And is there, I don't know what her questions are, but is there a will involved? Does the person who died have a will?
Yes, they had a will, and so far nothing's been contested. He's only got one child. And
usually not contested, but there are different kinds of probate. Their rules in Arizona will be probably a little different from our rules in Texas. But if there's a general, so I can't tell her specifically how things work in Arizona, but I can tell her kind of how they work in Texas, and maybe answer some general questions for her. You know, as I will point out in my talk, because
Good to talk to you.
Nice to meet you.
Yeah, you're great.
I've never met Justice.
Thank
Thank y'all for all.
I don't know how to judge y'all, but you're a doggone good speaker.
You guys have a Merry Christmas.
I appreciate y'all.
Enjoyed being with you.
Yeah,
30 years of trial work.
I guess so. Don't forget that.
Yeah.
But what I say, and when I'm talking next week, I'm going to remind people of just some of the basics. But what is a will? Not everybody has one, but what is a will? A will is like a deed. But a deed, like to your house or farm or something, after it's signed, you just take down to the county clerk and record it, and the property is transferred to whoever bought the property. A will is like a deed. It transfers your property, or at least most of your property, but you can't just take it down to the county clerk and record it. You first have to go in front of a judge, the county judge, and here it's Judge Moran here in Smith County. But you have to present it to the judge and have him validate. The word probate is another word for validate. You have to have him approve that that's a valid will.
Okay.
And that was signed by the testator, and it was witnessed or notarized or whatever. And he says, yes, that's a valid will. He's not going to rule on whether it's a good will or a bad will, but he's going to rule whether it's a valid will.
Okay.
And then and he's also going to rule on, well, did this will appoint somebody to administer the estate, to do whatever needs to be done to identify the property and pay any bills and transfer the property to whoever's supposed to get it.
Okay.
Well, that's called the executor. And so the judge does two things. It doesn't take him about 15 minutes ordinarily, unless there's some complication. But he reviews the will and hears a few facts confirmed, and then he signs an order which is probate or validates the will and appoints someone to administer that estate, the executor. And the will usually says who the beneficiary is and who the executor, the administrator is.
Right.
But they're not. It's not official until the judge signs an order declaring that yes, this is a valid will, and this person has been appointed executor of the estate. Then in Texas, you go away. You don't go back to court anymore. The executor is independent of the court. Once he says that's a valid will, and you're the valid executor, I don't want to see you again. You just go about your business. And what is the business of an executor? It's to identify what, once the will is probated, to find the will and probate the will, and then to find the assets. What did that person own? Did they own land, a house, stocks, cash, bank accounts? What did they own? And number two, did they owe any debts? Well, most people owe at least some debts. Well, you need to take the money that's in the estate and go pay those debts. And then after the debts have been paid, whatever's left, you make sure it's distributed, handed over to whoever was named as the beneficiary. And now in Texas, the executor does that job, identifying the assets, paying the bills, and transferring the asset, the remaining assets to the beneficiaries without ever going back to court. Now, in some states, you do have to go back to court to have everything you do approved by the court. In Texas, we just approve the will. We just,
I'm sorry.
Oh, we took here, I'll just put
thank
that on
you.
my bag, so you can put it up.
In Texas, we just approve the will and the name of the executor, and then tell them skedaddle and go
Go do
do
your
whatever
thing.
needs to be done.
Okay.
In
Okay.
Arizona, it may be a little different. Now, there are some assets, and I'll try to remember to point this out, because this is really important. Hope we'll point it out clearly.
Oh,
that-
gosh,
that
we're
while-
still recording.
While a will is a deed to most of your property,
Oh, gosh, did it not?
and usually a will will say, and upon my death, I give all my property according to this will. And usually